Hey BookTube, it's been a little while before I've made a video, so I thought I would make one today. And well, what do you guess? It's another book haul. Um, and there's a very specific reason for that. It's because well, I'm in the midst of getting ready to move, and it's always a depressing process. And when I was going all around the city searching for or viewing different places to move into. It's very busy and hectic, and if I landed near a thrift store, I could not hold my self control in, and I would just give in as a treat to myself and uh, buy some used books because just that seems to be the way that I cope these days. And so I'm not even going to apologize this time. It's just another used book haul. I said no more used books, and yet here I am. The one consolation that I tell myself is that the massive used book haul that happens twice a year doesn't seem to be scheduled for the latter half of this year. So they usually hold one in the end of April, and I did a five-part video series of my haul there, where I bought a ton of books for dirt cheap. And usually they have another one in the end of September, but this time it doesn't look like they have one. Where it's like a 3 day affair, and it's just tables of books in this gigantic mall, all along, all separated by subject matter, and that's disappointing. So I have to uh, fill that itch with thrift store finds instead, and that's what this video is. I'll be showing off my thrift store finds. It's how I usually divide it up. It's classics and fiction will be together, and then the nonfiction will be on the other side. So I'll do the nonfiction last because I think, well, I think I have. Well, I like my fiction finds better, so I want to show those off first. Um, my fiction and my classics. So we'll get right into it. We start off with this rather warped edition of Anna Karenina. As you can see, it's seen better days. It's been loved. It'll still work to read it though. I made sure to check that. But I have a few editions of this. I have the P. Vern Volkonsky translation in the Penguin Classic Deluxe edition that you see basically everywhere. And then I also have the David Magershak translation in the Signet Mass Market, which is the edition that I read this novel in. And I think I have one more. Yes, I have Rosemary Evans' Penguin Classic translation. Those are the three translations I have. This is the Bantam Mass Market, translated by Joel Carmichael, with an introduction by Malcolm Cowley. So I've never heard of Joel Carmichael as a translator, but he translates this version of Anna Karenina, and it is when was this published? The 60s, I think. Yeah, 1960 is the copyright for this translation. So just another translation of Anna Karenina. Even though it's rather battered, it's still usable, still very readable. So um, I had an excuse to read that novel a few times in different translations. And then speaking of Signet Classics, I picked up this anthology of Alexander Pope in the Signet Classic line. I kind of like Signet Classics, depending um, on their quality. So not all Signet Classics are made well, but this one is, where the spine is very flexible and readable. Some Signet Classics, where as soon as you open them like this, if they're brand new, then the spine will crack immediately on you. But this one is nice and floppy, and I like the cover. I like the design, and it includes all of Alexander Pope's main works. It includes The Rape of the Lock, the Essay on Criticism, an Essay on Man, and his translations of Horace, or his imitations of Horace, I should say, and then the Dunciad, which I've never actually heard of, but yeah, it includes a good selection of Alexander Pope. This is who is this edited by? Martin Price. It does the editing, and what actually interests me is that there is a little bit of annotation at the bottom of these pages, which is not something you usually get in a Signet Classic line. Usually they have a commissioned introduction, and that's it. They don't usually have much else. So this is a nice little anthology of Alexander Pope, so I figured I'd pick that up. And then we get to another sort of anthology, or collected works or whatever. This is the Selected Lives of Plutarch in the Wordsworth Classics edition, and this is the Thomas North translation, which is fairly significant because Thomas North is the translator of Plutarch, or he translated Plutarch's Lives into English for the first time, and it's the edition that Shakespeare ended up using for some of his plays on classical figures like Antony and Cleopatra, and I think Julius Caesar, and then there's one or two other plays. Actually, it says here in the back, Coriolanus as well is what he used as his source. So this is a selected lives of Plutarch, because the entire thing would be much thicker than this, and this already clocks in at over 800 pages. And the thing is, Thomas North is known not so much as an accurate translator, but as a beautiful worker of prose. So I've not actually read Thomas North's translation, but I've heard on good authority that his translation is a feat of English, or of Elizabethan prose, and I want to experience that for myself. So you go for this not so much as a translation of Plutarch, more for an interpretation in beautiful English prose. And this is not the entirety, of course. It says Selected Lives. The entire thing is much longer than this because Plutarch wrote a lot more, and Thomas North translated it all. I have actually the standard edition of Plutarch's Lives that is more expensive to get. It's the 2-volume hardcover from Heritage Press from like the 40s or something. That has a lot more of Thomas North's translation of Plutarch, and it doesn't. That edition, despite what it looks like, is not the entirety, because if you read the introduction of that volume, they mention how they leave out the incomplete works of Plutarch that are translated. So, because how Plutarch works is that he will choose a figure from ancient Greece, or from classical Greece, and from Rome, and then he'll write a life of one figure, and then write the life of the Roman figure, and then he'll write an essay in comparison. And we don't have all of those. Sometimes we only have the Roman or the Greek life, or sometimes we have both Roman and Greek life, but we don't have the comparison essay. And the Heritage Press translation leaves those standalone ones out because they don't survive. We don't have them, though we know that they were written. This version here seems to follow similar lines, where they include the 2 lives and then the comparison essay, other than, say, some famous lives where we don't have the comparison essay. So I guess I should go through here. We have the life of Theseus, and then the life of Romulus, and then the comparison essay, the life of Alcibiades, and the life of Coriolanus, and then the comparison essay, the life of Piraeus, and the life of Marius, and then there's no comparison essay here. Then we have the life of Nicias, the life of Crassus, and then comparison essay, the life of Alexander, and then the life of Julius Caesar, and then no comparison essay. And then the life of Demosthenes, and then the life of Cicero with the comparison essay, the life of Demetrius, and the life of Antonius with the comparison essay, which is almost 100 pages. No, that's not true. It's 10 pages. I was looking at the page numbers wrong. And then we have the life of Dion and the life of Brutus with the comparison essay. And that doesn't sound like a whole lot, but yet that's enough to fill this big chunky volume. And I believe Wordsworth Classic is the only modern edition of Thomas North's translation that you can get. You can't get the entire translation as an ebook. You can't get it anywhere else, and I find that quite annoying. So I picked this one up when I saw it because I believe this is the last time it's ever been in print. Anyways, that's a wordy chat about Plutarch, especially from someone who's never actually read Plutarch. But anyways, we move on to a double that I found, but this edition was so cool I couldn't turn it up. And this is The Bloody Chamber by Angela Carter. I've read most of The Bloody Chamber, not the entirety, but I have the Penguin Classic Deluxe Edition, where they have like the picture of like the door knocker with the um, face of an animal, and it's oversized and it's thin because it's a collection of short stories of Angela Carter's retelling of certain fairy tales. But this is a different. This looks like Penguin Classic Deluxe Edition with the all that artwork, all that original artwork here, and then we got a splatter of paint here, which is why I guess it was at the thrift store. But I like this edition more than that Penguin Classic Deluxe Edition. And I've read most of these stories, not all of them, but this does include one of my absolute favorite short stories of all time, The Lady of the House of Love, about a vampire, a woman, a female vampire who is weighted by her ancestry of vampires, and who is confronted by a young man on a bicycle who goes to her house, and what ensues is incredible to read, and she's a great writer just to begin with. The Bloody Chamber is the longest story in here, but while it starts off quite well, I'm not the biggest fan of that short story, but this is how the short story to the Bloody Chamber actually starts. I remember how that night I lay awake in the wagon lit, wait, I lay awake in the wagon lit in a tender, delicious ecstasy of excitement, my burning cheek pressed against the impeccable linen of the pillow, and the pounding of my heart mimicking that of the great pistons ceaselessly thrusting the train that bore me through the night. Away from Paris, away from girlhood, away from the white enclosed quietude of my mother's apartment, into that unguessable country of marriage. And then it just goes from there into the more fantastical elements. And I really do like this edition. I think that edition is just really, really cool. And actually, I should say that it says that this is the Penguin Ink line. So I don't know if this was a precursor to Penguin Classic Deluxe Edition, or if there's more in this Penguin Ink series, because I think that would be really cool to seek out um, some other volumes in this line, but I haven't given it a ton of research. So this is the only edition that I know of that exists in the Penguin Ink line. Anyways, then we move on to a short novel. This is Italo Calvino's Invisible Cities. This is just a very tiny little novel. The blurb here on the front says, "A subtle and beautiful meditation." And Italo Calvino doesn't never usually interested me as a novelist. I knew he's very experimental and whatever, but usually I avoid those authors that are labeled experimental unless I figure that they're worth reading. And I don't think I would have picked this up unless, except for I recently watched Jared Henderson's like hour-long bookshelf tour, and he had a section on Italo Calvino, and he mentioned this work as his most famous work. And I found it at the thrift store shortly after that, and I thought that maybe the fates were giving me a nudge to give this a try. So it's very short. The print is very big, so this shouldn't take me very long to read, and I know it's why not give it a try? So I figured I'd pick that one up. And then we move on to some more novels, more contemporary novels. I'll do this one classic first, and then we'll get into the contemporary novels. This is The Sound and the Fury by William Faulkner in a Norton Critical Edition, edited by David Mintner. And of all novels that need a critical edition, I think this would be one of them. I've not read any Faulkner before, mostly because I hesitate to. I do have a lot of Faulkner, actually, comparatively speaking, that I've never actually read him. Um, but this novel is known to be very difficult, and it has defeated many a dude bro who love puzzle novels, puzzle books. And since I'm not a dude bro and I don't care for puzzle books, I have been giving this one a pass. But it's firmly entrenched in the American canon, and it's really unavoidable at this point. And so getting some help. It has minor annotations. It doesn't have a whole lot of annotation. I could have used more, but getting some annotation is better than none, I think. And then, of course, then you get all the background and all the critical apparatus that you usually get in a Norton Critical edition. Let's see where that begins. The novel here, I think, is around 200 pages in this edition. Um, yeah, right here. The background. This is all background and critical material, including. Is this a map or something? I just turned it to this page here. That's pretty cool. Yeah, it looks like a map of some kind. So neat. Norton Critical of The Sound of the Fury. And then we get to the 4 contemporary novels that I found, and 2 of them were on that world famous book reviewers lists of best of fiction, um, in for their respective years. And so I'll start with those 2. The first one is John Boyne's The Heart's Invisible Furies, a historical novel. Yeah, taking place in Ireland, and yeah, it's a nice little chunky historical novel. That sounds fairly interesting, but it was on the world famous book reviewers best of lists. And if you've been following my channel, I've been scouring those lists for fiction recommendations. And since this one was on there for whatever year this came out, um, 2018, so 2017, 2018, somewhere around there, that's when this would have appeared on that list. And this is an interesting pickup for me because I have read this author's most famous work. This is his YA novel called A Boy in the Striped Pajamas, which is a very short thing about a young um, German boy whose father is a Nazi and who befriends a Jewish boy across the fence, or through a fence, um, of a concentration camp. And it was made a big deal. It tugs at everyone's heartstrings. It was made into a movie, I believe. Um, but that novel, I read that novel maybe 2 years ago already, or maybe it was last year. But that was one of the few novels I've actually hated after reading because of just how historically inaccurate it was and how manipulative it was. Manipulative in in a knowing way. Um, and I seriously hated that novel. And it tells you the level of trust I have in the world famous book reviewer that I'm willing to go back to this author. But this is not a young adult novel. This is a adult historical fiction novel. So it'll be a very different register than The Boy in Striped Pajamas. Because even then, the list of novels here, it has all his like adult novels, and then it says novels for younger readers, which includes The Boy in the Striped Pajamas. So I assume, um, yeah, assume will be it'll be a different register. So I picked this one up, and that'll be an interesting read. This next read was actually quite a find. I'm very pleased with this, and it's The Alienist by Caleb Carr, which has been a huge phenom when it came out in the 90s. When did it come out in the 90s? 1994, and it's another historical fiction work, and it's about like a psychologist and Theodore Roosevelt as chief of police, like finding a murder or something. And this was a huge publishing sensation, and I've seen this quite often used, but I've always seen it in battered mass market paperbacks that have been well loved and well read, or the occasional like normal paperback size, but then again, it's also been battered and well loved. And this is the first time I've seen this in hardcover, and I think this must be uh, a Book of the Month Club edition or something because it's got nothing, no blurbs or anything on the back, no obnoxious, New York Times bestseller sticker or anything. It's just a naked dust jacket in a hardcover. Unless this was a first edition, which I never actually bothered to check. No, it doesn't look like it because it doesn't have any of that first edition stuff in the front there. This must be like a Book of the Month Club edition or something. And it's got these cool end papers there. You got just a photograph sitting there, and the same photograph there. But yeah, I'm very glad to find this because the premise strikes me as fascinating, and I get it in a sturdy hardcover that's also been rather loved. But it's held up, and I believe it'll hold up for me. And then we move on to the last two novels. These last two novels are not on the world famous book reviewers lists, but they're sort of adjacent. Well, except for this first one. This first one here is The City on Fire by Garth Risk Hellberg, which is a debut novel that took the world by storm. And I think this is either this is a first edition or Book of the Month Club edition too, because it's only got the one advanced blurb on the back, and then a quotation from the book, and it's got no other, blurb or anything polluting the dust cover, and it's just this big fat hardcover too. But this was a huge debut. Seems to be fairly, I don't know if controversial is the word, but it's, it confused a lot of people, at least from the glance that I took on Amazon and Goodreads of the reviews, where it seems to work for some who call it brilliant, and others were very confused by it or thought it was dragging on, because this is fairly long, I believe. Yeah, it's almost 900. It's over 900 pages, and I picked this up because I think Steve Donahue recently held this, maybe a month or two ago, and because the author came out with a new novel, and I think Steve wanted to read this novel and thought it was more successful than his new novel. And the interesting thing with this novel is that it includes interludes here. Let's see if I can show you one. Interludes, where amidst the novel, it'll have this interlude, and then it'll just have like these written hand notes or whatever, or something simulating a magazine or whatever. Here, I'll show you the one with the magazine. They're sort of like illustrations, but they're not quite. Like, look at that. And it's this whole issue of a magazine or whatever just put into the pages of this novel, and that immediately makes me think of the ebook and how that works as an ebook. Because if I had this as an ebook, would those photographs or whatever, would they even show up or be readable on an e-reader screen? Because an e-reader is fairly primitive technology, and I've found that they struggle even with a PDF of showing images or relaying crystal clear photography. So it'd be interesting to see how this would work as an ebook. But I'm glad I have it as a hardcover. I'll give it a try and see if the hype around this debut novel was worth it back in when was this published? Published in 2015, so about 10 years ago. So 10 years ago. Let's see if this was a novel that stood the test of time. And then we get to a kind of a weird novel. This is The Book of Dave by Will Self. Will Self is an author that has appeared on the world famous book reviewers lists. Just the one book called Telephone or Phone or something. and it's very experimental. I've tried reading the very beginning, and it's very weird and very much one of those books that tries to challenge you um, with the way it presents its story and language, or at least its composition. And I think this book here is no different. Um, and the reason why, well, let's say this: the novel Phone as a premise interests me a lot, and I want to read it because it is on the world famous book reviewers lists. But the problem is that's the third book in a trilogy following the same sequence of characters. And the second book, or no, the first book is called Umbrella, which was a finalist for the Booker Prize, I think in 2011 or 2012 or something. And then he followed it up with a second book called Shark, which has one of the ugliest covers that I've seen. And then he followed it up with Phone, which is the book that made the world famous book reviewers best fiction list. And so I've had Will Self as on the periphery of my mind when going used book shopping, and this is the first novel of his that I've actually found used, and it's the Book of Dave, and this is a book that I'm going to read the dust jacket copy because it is a wild sequence here. When East End cab driver Dave Rudman's wife takes from him his only son, Dave pens a gripping text, a compilation about everything from the environment, Arabs, and American tourists to sex, Prozac, and cabbie lore that captures all his frustrations and anxieties about his contemporary world. Dave buries the book in his ex-wife's Hampstead backyard, intending it for his son, Carl, when he comes of age. 500 years later, Dave's book is found by the inhabitants of Ham, a primitive archipelago in post-apocalyptic London, where it becomes a sacred text of biblical proportions and the template for a new civilization. Only one islander, Simon, remains incredulous, but after he is imprisoned for hearsay, his son Carl must journey through the Forbidden Zone and into the terrifying heart of New London to find the only thing that will reveal the truth once and for all, a second book of Dave that repudiates the first. Equal parts dystopian fantasy, religious allegory, detective story, and tribute to the sometimes fraught relationships between fathers and sons, the Book of Dave is a profound meditation upon the nature of religion and a caustic satire of contemporary life. So there's like 4 or 5 different meta layers going on in that book. And what I find interesting is that the dust jacket, or the hardcover here, includes a map on right on the inside here of the hardcover. And this is the map of post-apocalyptic London, called the Archipelago Ham. And I think the other side here, yeah, this is the New London and the islands. So on the very end here, it says AD 523, which Will Self labels as after Dave. And yeah, so it's a very weird novel idea, like a very meta novel and social commentary using fantasy and dystopian I don't know, the dystopian trappings to make some kind of social point. So we'll see where that goes with this book. I can't say what I think about this because I don't know. Like can't say I'm excited for it or whether or not it's going to be just a one huge gimmick that's going to fall flat, which I hope is not the case. I hope this is entertaining and at least follow like you can follow it. It says The Book of Dave, a revelation of the recent past and the distant future by Will Self. So there's that. That's my fiction. And I'm already 30 minutes in. My goodness, do I ramble on in these videos. Why anyone watches these is beyond me. So I'll go through the nonfiction here, and it should go fairly quickly because I don't need to explain the novels and why they interest me so much. So we start off with a big whopping book of philosophy probably the biggest headache of them all, maybe a huge contender with Hegel. But this is Immanuel Kant's Critique of Pure Reason, translated by Norman Kemp Smith. This is a translation from the 20s, which interests me because I love following the timeline of translations, especially if there's many different translations of a work. So the fact that this is from the 20s and we have much more modern translations, and seeing how the translator's philosophy, I guess no pun intended, considering that this is a work of philosophy, but how the translator's philosophy changes over time. And yeah, this is a work of philosophy, the probably the book that made Immanuel Kant's name, and still one of the most debated and argued for or against books in all of philosophy. And I just found it in a nice paperback that I think, yeah, that still largely holds up. The question is, am I going to read this front to back? And you'd think I would if I bought a copy, but I don't know. We'll see. Uh, it's doubtful. I might use this more as a reference work, which is always helpful to have, but I still don't know. It's a big question mark, but it's good to have it. It's good to have it on my shelf. Uh, then we come to a work that I'm very glad to find, because this has been on my wish list actually. For those of you who don't know, I am working my way through the Western canon, and I have this huge Western canon reading list that I made myself, stealing and borrowing and whatever from all different kinds of Western canon lists, and then making my own. And my own includes Soren Kierkegaard, another philosopher, and another philosopher known for his impenetrable prose, or at least for his complexity. And so I found this Kierkegaard anthology edited by Robert Breital, and this is one that's been on my wish list because Kierkegaard is not one of those authors that has like that one standalone, um, magnum opus. He has many different ones, and then he's got a ton of work in between. He's also a philosopher that's known to not just be challenging as a writer, but challenging in his point of view, because in many of his different works, he's changing perspective and writing under pseudonyms and from different personas. So it's really hard to parse out what is Kierkegaard and what's just the persona. And because I don't actually want to read, or before I decide if I want to read a lot of Kierkegaard's his standalone works, which he has quite a few, like Either or, Fear and Trembling, um, uh, unscientific postscript manuscripts or whatever, Sickness unto Death, Philosophical Fragments, uh, many different works like that. Before I want to decide if I actually want to go through Kierkegaard, which to me is kind of doubtful, I figure an anthology is the way to go, and this is perfect. This is 400, or no, this is 500, or just under 500 pages of of a of translated Kierkegaard, and I think going through this, reading this front to back, will be the way to go, whether or not I decide if I want to read more of Kierkegaard. Uh, and I read the short introduction by this author here, or the editor here, and he basically says he chooses his favorite parts of Kierkegaard through all of Kierkegaard's works, and puts it into this anthology. The parts of Kierkegaard that he thinks are worth reading by a vast audience, usually for school, I would think, because why else would a university press put out an anthology like this? So yeah, I'm very glad to find this. And then we move on to an oddity for me, or not, well, not for me, because it's a subject that fascinates me, but it's an oddity in, I don't know, just the book itself. It's called Good Girls, Bad Girls, and it says Sex Trade Workers and Feminists Face to Face, edited by Lurie Bell. And it's exactly what it says it is. It's um, a book that came from a conference where feminists and prostitutes were brought face to face and to have a dialogue. It was a conference that took place in the 80s in Canada, and what and all these essays here basically uh, come out of that discussion or that. And so part one is Feminists Speak. It says Feminists Speak, and so we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 essays here by feminists talking about different aspects of prostitution, sexual politics, pornography, and then we have the sex trade workers, is how they call them here. Sex trade workers speak. They have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 essays here from the sex trade workers, as they call them. And then there's a part 3 where they have more of a dialogue, I guess, between the sex trade workers and feminists. And then we have, that includes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 essays there. And it's just on all different aspects of this topic, because of course there's a huge tension there where what's the whole idea of a sex trade worker is usually, or 99% of the time, you're a woman working for male desire. And the feminist movement was very much trying to avert the male gaze, and it seemed like sex trade, prostitution, that was countering feminist progress. And so that's why you have this clash of two very different worlds coming together and trying to come to a discussion. And I find that fascinating. I do have a lot of works actually on the sex trade and prostitution, but it's all from one perspective, and it's all against prostitution and the sex trade. And so this one gives more of a balance on that. And so we'll see what I make of it. And then we have more nonfiction. This is more modern nonfiction. This is Evicted, Poverty and Profit in the American City. This is by Matthew Desmond. I really do love that cover there, where it's an apartment that had pictures on the wall, and then they're all taken down. And then you just see how the paint behind them shines brighter than the sun-faded paint beside it. And this was a huge book during its time when it came out. When did it come out? 2016, it says here. And it's just about this. It's basically a journalistic book that follows a number of different families that are very much at that poverty line, where sometimes they're above it and they have their own apartment, and sometimes they're below it and they're struggling for rent, or struggling for just to find a place to live. And the whole point is to show a very that very unfair aspect of, in this case, American life in trying to find a roof over one's head, right? And how that line between homeless or having a home and being homeless for some is a very fine line indeed. And it's a very different perspective than than one that I'm used to, because I've never had to experience that, and I've never had that really challenged myself. And I think that's an important perspective that will at least broaden and stretch my mind a little bit, because I've never been, one late rent payment away from being kicked to the curb and having nowhere else to go. And it's something that is very unfortunate, and something that needs to be I need to learn more about and come to grips with. But yeah, and so that's why I pick up that book. And I believe I forget which booktuber mentioned that book recently. Maybe it was Lukash from A Cruel Reader's Thesis. I think it might have been him. um, but it could have been someone else too. Then we get into more work, history. So all the rest of my books are history. We start off with a fascinating book. This is Absolute Monarchs by John Julius Norwich, and the subtitle here is A History of the Papacy, which is why I love that title, Absolute Monarchs, and it's a history of the papacy. And it's a very much a popular history, as the author tries to, or very much drives home that point in his introduction. He says he's not a practiced scholar or a theologian or anything of the matter. He's just a person who, um, uh, uh, an intelligent writer, someone who has been up close with some of these figures before and wants to write a entertaining and historically sound work for the layperson, and that's what this is. And you can see it's been well loved because it's got a fairly good crease in it, which is not something that you see with most nonfiction books when you see them in the wild. So it's good to see that this one has been loved. And I mean, the Catholic Church has been one of the most powerful institutions in the world for the past 2,000 years. So this will just be a little snippet of that history and presented in an entertaining manner, I presume. Then we get to a sort of biography, not really a biography, but it's sort of one. It's Alexander the Great, Journey to Journey to the End of the Earth by Norman F. Cantor, and it's a very tiny little work, but it looks like this is more of a psychological portrait sketch of Alexander the Great than it is a historical analysis, based on what I read through the introduction. Because I mean, look how thin that is. It's basically a glorified essay. Yeah, it's not even 200 pages. It's 173 pages, and the words are fairly big, so it's not thorough. It's not a thorough biography by any sense of the word, and that's okay because I have many of those, and I don't think I need any more. Um, and the thing is, this is not the only book by Alexander the Great that I actually saw there. I saw Paul Cutledge's biography of Alexander the Great, but I didn't pick it up because I have that as an ebook already, and I didn't figure I needed a physical copy. And this I have not encountered before. I do have some of Norman Cantor's other books. He wrote some books on the medieval era. Uh, I have his Civilization of the Middle Ages, and then I have his Inventing the Middle Ages. And then a book that isn't listed here is his book on antiquity, I believe, that I have as an ebook. So just another historical work by a well-known historical writer. Then we have this Curiosity, which honestly I love. It's I think these are hidden gems that people don't really see as works of scholarship, at least from my perspective, and how I see readers, like people who read history. They don't usually hold up these books, especially here on BookTube. And it's this book here. This is the French Revolution from 1770 to 1814. This is by Francois Furet, and it's this publisher here, Blackwell Publishing. I don't know anymore if they do this anymore, but they used to at least. They published these works of translated scholarship that I would never have encountered any other way other than the fact that they are translated. So I should credit the translator here. Translated by Antonia Novell. And what Blackwell used to do is they had this agreement with many different publishers in different countries. So in Germany, in France, I think in Italy, and maybe a few more, which I don't recall. They were the one in England, obviously, where they would each publish, they would commission scholarly works like not so much like a textbook, though this is what it very much looks like a textbook, but it's works of scholarship, or they would take works of scholarship that were, by a famous historian from uh, their era. Like this is a French historian writing about France, this very specific period of France, and they would translate it in different languages. So they would have someone in Germany would translate this in German, and in Italy they would translate this into Italian, and in England this translation would this would be the English version. And I'm just reaching for the other book here. I have another example of that. This is The Birth of Modern Science by Paolo Rossi, and this is the Making of Europe series, and it's very much of the same vein. It's from Blackwell Publishing. It looks like a textbook. It's very uh, has that very bland but like and textbooky looking cover. And this is translated by Cynthia de Nardi Ibsen, and they have a whole list of books that they published in this series from all different kinds of scholars from many different languages. And I just find that whole idea fascinating. I have a number of their books uh, in this publishing line, and I really can't praise them enough. There's just feats of scholarship from different languages that I would normally never have access to. And I know modern um, university presses sometimes do translated scholarship that come to great fanfare, and that's always really cool. But these works have seemed to pass people by completely, uh, and it's maybe has to do with marketing and the problem with these looking like textbooks. But anyways, I'll not stop rambling about these Blackwell Publishing line. Just to say that if you're interested in history and you see one of these books, then it's probably a good and it's cheap. You can pick it up and give it a read because then you'll be exposed to scholarship that you wouldn't have otherwise, unless you knew French or Italian or German. Anyways, we move on to some very boring history. It's Canadian history. And Canadian history is very boring, but I need to learn more about it. It's my heritage. It's my where I'm from. So it's Canada, 1900 to 1995. Sorry. So right after the World War, and it's by Robert Bothwell, Ian Drummond, and John English. And this is their follow-up to a more famous book, I guess, called Canada since 1945. And so they wrote like a prequel to that book, and it's got just cartoons all over. I like the cartoon on the spine there. I don't know who these figures are. I don't know enough about 20th century Canadian politics to actually know um, what is going on in this cover here, but it's a great cover, especially for a Canadian history book. And yeah, it's just another book in the line of Canadian history books that I'm trying to collect and give a try. And then this next two-volume set is just more Canadian history. It's let's see here. Canadian. It's readings in Canadian history, and we got pre-Confederation, so pre-1867. And then we got post-Confederation, so post-1867. And this is the fourth edition, and it's got two authors, R. Douglas Francis and Ronald B. Smith. And yeah, we got these two figures here. This is very much a textbook-like work, and I have never seen it before, and I decided to pick it up. When I first thought I was hoping that it would be an anthology of primary sources, post and pre-Confederation. But that's not what it actually is. Even though it says readings in Canadian history, it's actually just historians writing essays on specific topics in Canadian history, and then they're included in this volume here. So it's still something that I can use, just not and read and learn from, but it's not exactly what I hoped it was going to be. And then we have the last book at the 50-minute mark. We have the last book, and it is the most beautiful book that I found. It's another folio history book. Another folio. It's the last plague, or the Great Plague. Sorry, the Great Plague. And in this beautiful naked hardcover. Look how shiny that is. I don't know if you can tell through the camera. And it's by Walter George Bell, and it's The Great Plague in London, edited and introduced by Belinda Hollier, and it was published in 2001 by Folio. But the actual book itself comes from 1924, and this is an abridged edition. And the editor writes a tiny little sketch on why this was abridged, basically saying that he goes for tangents and unnecessary rants or whatever in the original that she figured could be cut out. And I guess Folio had at this time a size limit, and they didn't want to publish a book thicker than this. But it's a very beautiful work. It's got some illustrations in it. See if I can find any. Yeah, there we go. Some illustrations in it. And in 2001 at least, this was even in 2001, this was considered to be the best work on the Plague of London from, I think, 1668 or something. I think that's the plague. Yeah, 1665. That's when the Great Plague of London occurred, and this is just an intelligent layman writing a work, an entertaining account of the Plague of London. So it's not a scholar, not a extremely not someone who did their PhD thesis or something on this period. It's just someone who figured that the Great Plague of London from 1665 lacked a history, and they did the research and wrote a book about it. And in 1924, that was still something that you could do. At least that was something that was more like you could do without the snobbery of academia, at least from my impression. And the editor here argues that this is still the work to read on the Plague of London. And so that's why I picked it up. That's it. That's it for my book haul. At 52 minutes, I seem completely unable to do a short video under 30 minutes. Maybe the next time I make a video, I'll have to make it short intentionally. Or next time I make a book haul video, I hold myself to like 20 minutes or something. And then I'll just leave it at that. So enough of my rambling. Thanks, BookTube, and feel free to chastise me for buying more used books. It's not quite a problem yet, but buying used books when I'm just going to start attempting to move, it's probably not the wisest thing, but it's so much fun, BookTube, and I can't stop. Well, I can stop. I can stop whenever I choose to. I can choose to stop whenever I want to. But anyways, I'll leave it there. Thanks, BookTube.